Morning. Today is Tuesday, February 28th, 2017. It's a regular meeting of the Los Angeles Board of Police Commissioners. The Chief of Police and Matt Johnson, the Police Commission President, are at the event commemorating the 20th anniversary of the North Hollywood Bank of America shootout. So they'll be here when they're finished. Madam Secretary, will you please call the roll?
Let the record reflect Commissioner Soboroff, Figueroa Villa, and McLean Hill and Goldsmith are present, and we have a quorum.
Thank you. We'll go to item number 1, consent agenda items. Are there any comments, or are there any public comments on any of the items?
No public comment cards on the consent agenda items at this time.
So, anybody want to chat about any of them, or we have a motion for approval of all 4?
Motion to approve consent agenda items A, B, C, D.
Okay. Do you have a second?
Second.
Okay. With thanks to the donors, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Give me 1 second. I don't want to do what we did at the Academy Awards. I want to make sure I'm reading this correctly. Okay, let's go to regular consent items. I want to leave 2A to the end. Do we have any speaker cards on 2B or C? And then comments on, or any comments from commissioners? On D or E, we do have comments. So on B or C, do you have any public cards?
We have no public comment cards on any of the regular agenda items.
Okay, items B and C, do we have a motion for approval?
Move to approve.
Have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Item number D. We do have one question. Let's see, who's up to present? Just a quick question. You guys don't have to, from my perspective, anybody want to hear a presentation? Matt had a question, and he emailed me last night, and I just asked his question. Anybody else have any? Okay. Matt's question.
Can you please use your mic, sir?
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Thank you.
On 2D, Matt said he was confused as to why the recommendation from the audit from 2013-14 is still under review. How long ago was that recommendation was made, and what's the delay in the implementation? Does that ring any bells? Go ahead.
They're my bosses.
Oh, okay.
Gentlemen, can you please state your names for the record?
Yes, Lieutenant Darryl Martin, Darryl Martin, Audit Division.
Sergeant James Sands, serial number 26763, Audit Division.
Detective David Kennedy, Audit Division.
But Dave, did you find what he's talking about?
I see it here. I see the status on recommendation indicating in progress. I believe that's something that the department has to answer to as far as the Policies and Procedures Division, as they are indicating that the recommendation is still under review.
How do you want to do that?
Chief Yeagas is looking right now for
Okay,
the
yeah,
item,
take
so
it.
give me just a second. It's recommendation 1, George. No, it's on the search warrant audit. Next page back.
My note on this was the grade was an A grade. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all were 90% or higher. I thought it was a flying colors. So
Yeah,
I didn't catch the issue. recommendation from 2013.
I think in the previous audit, they found that they,
Oh, this is the prior recommendations.
right, it was from the previous audit, not from this audit.
Okay.
Basically.
Well, we don't need to hold the
yeah.
meeting up for that.
It was use of an employee comment report instead of a TAC plan.
Okay, well, somebody just, when they determine, pop us an email on it.
Yeah, Commissioner, we'll follow up on this, and I'll make sure that you get an email today
Okay.
with
I don't-
respect, and for the rest of the board members, and Mr. Tiefenk as well.
Okay. Do we have any public comments on 2D?
No public comment cards.
I don't see any reason to hold it up. Can we have a motion for approval of 2D? Bless you.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, let's go to 2E.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Sorry. Again, this is a Security Services Division audit.
Please state your names for the record.
I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Again, I had a comment from Matt. I didn't personally have a comment on this. Matt's was, what can we do to cooperate with the zoo or encourage the zoo to move ahead forthwith here?
Good morning, Mr. Vice President. My name is Vito Palazzolo, Commander, Office of Special Operations. So the issue identified with the zoo has been addressed, and we met with the zoo management on a number of occasions. And basically, it is an issue, budgetary issue. The cameras are required, and some of the things that need to be put in place require funding, which they do not have. Their priorities are elsewhere with the limited funds that they do have. But we continue to meet with them on a regular basis and make recommendation. The last assessment we did of the zoo to make recommendations to further enhance the safety and the security of the zoo was done in October 2016. And we will once again follow through in this fiscal year to see if they can appropriate some funds to make those recommended enhancements.
Okay, great. Gotcha. Any questions, anyone? We should all go visit the zoo. It's a great place.
It is a great place, and I recommend it. Thank you, sir.
Okay, great. Take the kids. Okay, do we have a motion for approval? Oh, do you have any public comment cards on this one?
No public comment cards.
Okay. Motion for approval?
Motion to approve or was it?
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, anyone opposed? Okay, let's go to item number 3 is a report of the chief. Thank you, Vito.
Good morning, Commissioners. Last week, as you may be aware, the department received a partial contract with the MTA, and what this will enable us to do is to provide a greater level of service to the community of Los Angeles. Will enable us to have essentially approximately 144 extra personnel in terms of shifts that will be assigned to provide services. We also last week had an off-duty officer-involved shooting in the city of Anaheim. As a result of the information that we have learned, that person is now in non-field assignments. We are conducting an administrative investigation, and Anaheim Police Department is conducting a criminal investigation.
And that will, when you get all the information, that will come as a full report to the Commission for Adjudication, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Force Investigation Division is conducting a full administrative investigation.
Okay, good, thanks.
As it relates to crime, year to date, our violent crime is down. Homicide's down close to 9%. Rape is down 17%. In terms of the first category and the second category, overall rape is down 8%. Robbery is up 3%, and aggravated assaults are down negative 8%. Property crime is up in some of the categories and down in others for an overall decrease of less than 1%. And total Part 1 crime is a decrease of 0.2%. It's still early on in the year, so the numbers will fluctuate slightly, but eventually they'll flatten out for us so that we can have a consistent comparison to last year. What's encouraging, however, is that this year our shootings and shots fired are down. We're down 10% year-to-date in terms of shots fired, and our victims of shootings is down close to 5.5%. That's the end of my report. Thank you.
Okay. Everything okay? Do we have any commissioner comments or questions on the report? Okay, public comments?
We have 6 comment cards,
Okay, let's begin.
starting with Oscar, followed by Pastor Lou Marie and Akili.
Okay. Morning, sir.
Hi, I wanted to talk about the Anaheim incident. I don't know how you can watch that video of Officer Ferguson in Anaheim and come to the conclusion that he is still fit to patrol our neighborhoods with a loaded weapon. The 13-year-old kid was not armed and repeatedly begged to be let go. Ferguson continued the physical struggle with this child, knowing the entire time that he had a loaded gun in his waistband. I really can't believe that they had the 2 kids arrested, but Officer Ferguson was not. And to know that that kind of poor judgment around unarmed teenagers is still protected by the LAPD oversight, even when in plain view of the public, is extremely concerning. We need accountability now. We will not let this be the future of policing in Los Angeles. And where does this incident fall on your new use of force policy, which you spent so much time on? If it doesn't protect our kids from you crazy cops, then it's useless. It is extremely dangerous for you to be conveying this message to our kids that this is okay, that this is expected, that it is acceptable for an adult to pull a gun on you if you try to save your friend from a violent attacker. They cannot grow up believing that this is acceptable, an acceptable way to treat 13-year-old children. Thanks.
Next, please.
Good morning. I'm Pastor Q.
Morning, sir.
From CLU, Clergy and Laity United for Economic Justice, and also part of the Black Jewish Justice Alliance and the Black and Brown Clergy Coalition. At CLU, we were deeply disturbed about what happened in Anaheim because we are doing work in Anaheim currently, and so it's deeply troubling. I think about when Jesus said, "Blessed are the peacemakers." And then I'm wondering, and I struggle every day with how can we have peace in our city? In order to make peace, there must be an environment of justice. This week, we commemorated the 1-year anniversary of the state-sanctioned execution of Trayvon Martin because of a vigilante. Black Lives Matter began in response to this state-sanctioned injustice because the state would not protect us. Now in Anaheim, we see the same vigilante mentality played out. But I want to give some historical context. Stokely Carmichael said on June 16, 1966, in response to police harassing civil rights protesters, "This is the 27th time I've been arrested. I ain't going to jail no more. The only way we're going to stop them white men from whooping us is to take over. We're going to start saying now, what we're going to start saying now is black power." And today, black power means Black Lives Matter. And what were they asking for? They were asking for educational reform in our schools, prison reform. This was in 1967, welfare right, constraint on police, better employment opportunities, and anti-poverty programs. For a kid to be walking across a lawn and someone who's not even on duty to grab them, and I saw the video, he kept saying, "Let me go. Why are you holding on to me? Let me go." And he would not let him go because he feels he has the right to do this because the public and white supremacist system will support him.
Thank you, sir. Next.
Next, we have Akili, followed by Red Chief Hunt and Melina Abdullah.
They're on the grass. They're on the grass. They're on my grass. They're on my grass. That's enough to be said for me to rush out, grab a 13-year-old, hold him, and threaten him. They're on my grass. What message does that send to our children? We've seen our children thrown down in high school rooms. We've seen police attack us after pool parties. And now we see an off-duty police grab a child, hold the child with a gun in his hand. Is that the kind of person we want on the street? Is that the kind of person I want? I have a 13-year-old son. I don't want that man holding my son under any circumstances. If the practice is upheld, you will do an investigation. Your investigation will come back in policy. Some of you may say he used bad judgment. And nothing will be done. And once again, there'll be no accountability, no responsibility, and no consequence. That is unacceptable. If your policy upholds that behavior, change the policy. Don't allow that to happen. Because if he does that to a child like that, what is he doing on the street? What will he do to a child, another child he sees on the street who may have suspicion of something? It is time you all move from enforcement to public policy. It's time you all move from control and suppression to protect and serve, if you can do that. Thank you.
Morning, sir.
Good morning, Red Chief Hunt. I think here's what the thing is. It's child endangerment. How many kids have run across people's grass when they were growing up? I have. And I bet everybody in here has. The guy needs to be arrested for child endangerment. The bottom line is he was out of policy. Leo Terrell said it best on Fox News. What policy is there to shoot a gun down, down, down? I mean, if you watch Fox News, he said it best. There is no policy that says, well, if you run a kid run across my grass, I'm going to pull out a gun. That doesn't even make good judgment. That's just like LAPD. Doesn't even have good sense. When you arrest people that work, when you arrest people that are playing, kids play. That's what they do. At the age of 13, the cop needs to be arrested for child endangerment. LAPD needs to dismiss him right away. And that's the bottom line. You can't look at it no other way. You can't say it no other way. Child endangerment. Any of us would have been put in jail and district attorney would have brought charges against us. There's no other way you can look at it. If a kid run across my grass, I'm going to say, well, they're just playing. Not, oh, he's running across my grass, this is my goddamn property. Doesn't even make any goddamn sense. Just like most of the things that LAPD does don't really make any sense. You don't arrest people for working, you don't arrest kids for playing, just out of policy. And you guys need to learn that, and you guys need to uphold and protect the children of the United States and the children of our future. That's the bottom line. There is no more discussion. Fire his ass, get it over with, and let's move on.
Thank you, sir. Got two more?
We have one late one as well. Would you like to include that?
Yeah.
Okay. We have Melina Abdullah, followed by Tut Hayes, and followed by Luis Carrillo.
Okay.
So we've been coming here for years now, demanding the firing of Charlie Beck. And I think that when we think about what Kevin Ferguson did last week, when we think about what he did and how he endangered a child, a group of children, it's indicative of why Beck needs to be fired. He has created conditions that make cops feel empowered to do this kind of thing. You know, oftentimes when we come up and we kind of come here, it becomes routine, and, you know, we're trying to hurriedly speak to item numbers, and we're talking about names and saying their names and trying to get you to say their names. And we, I think in the midst of that, sometimes forget that these are real people. I'm the mother of a 13-year-old child. I have a 13-year-old daughter. These are babies. You two, at least I know the two of you are parents. Think about who your children were at 13. Think about whether or not they walked across grass, right? Whether or not, they would have been scared when a grown-ass man grabbed them by the backpack and refused to let them go. What kind of courage did it take for that little boy to stand up for that little girl and for the entire group when they saw a grown man grabbing this child to say, you won't take our friend? So then what are we going to do to protect our babies who could be your babies? They could be your babies. So what are you going to do? I know we have rules, but this is a time for vision. We need you to do more than just say these are the rules. We need you to find a way to get Kevin Ferguson off the streets, because every moment he's there endangers our children. This is not the first time he's done this. He's only been on the force 3 years and has 2 incidents of assaulting children of color. What will you do? What will you do? Will you be on the side of those who say that we want fascism? Or will you be on the other side and say we want freedom?
Okay,
what will you do?
Comments. Who's next?
What will you do, Steve Soboroff?
We have Ted Hayes, followed by Luis Carrillo.
Morning, Mr. Hayes.
Good morning, sir. 77th Division, Coffee with Cops, Wednesday, February 15th. Join the LAPD 77th Division for coffee to know the officers who work in your neighborhood. No agendas, no guest speakers. This is just a chance to sit and talk about whatever may concern you. I find this astounding and extraordinary. I really do. I don't know whether the officers volunteer for this or whether they have an assignment. I would hope they volunteer. And I hope they're not selected to be the ones who are the most courteous, the ones who are most congenial, the ones who know how to do social contact. Just regular cops. The good mixed with the bad, whatever. But this is unusual. I don't know whether this was initiated by the commander of that division or whether it's a department policy. But it should be looked into as far as policy is concerned. First of all, find out how this one turned out. I wasn't able to make it. So I can't report. I have no idea who was there because we didn't assign anyone to attend it. But I think it's very useful and very functional to have you get to know the cops who work in your neighborhood. There are no more beat cops. We know that. When there were beat cops, it was an assignment when you followed up. But somehow, other than assigning cops to teach our children how to wrestle when they're at-risk kids, teach them how to be more brutal, more violent, more physical than they already are, we don't need that. Black people dominate the physical world. I think you know that from the Olympics all the way to any kind of athletic event. Don't need to know how to wrestle and throw a grown man to the ground and pin him. But this is something I think is worthwhile. I'm going to go to 77th Street and find out whether I can get a download on how it turned out. Thank you.
Yeah, there are a lot of them. They happen almost every week, a lot of times at McDonald's or other places. It's a wonderful program, and I hope you will participate. Last speaker.
Luis Carrillo.
Morning, sir.
Good morning. Good morning, ladies. Good morning, gentlemen. I agree with Melina that this is a moment of truth for the LAPD and for Chief Beck. A moment of truth because thanks to some brave kids, you all got to see what appears to be a complete unjustified excessive use of force and brandishing a weapon when the circumstances did not require brandishing a weapon. Worst of all, he fired his gun when there was no imminent threat to his life at the time, since he was facing unarmed teenagers, 13 years old. And you know how it all started? It all started with some kids walking across his grass. The officer did not control himself. He was poorly trained because of the fact that he did not use cool judgment, mature judgment, and immediately lashed out at a 13-year-old girl. This officer, the kids report, called this 13-year-old girl a FNBITCH, and he called her a CUNT. That's why little Christian was a hero. He stood up for the girl, and he told the officer, don't talk that way to her. Which, in turn, he lost his cool, he lost his judgment. He escalated the situation instead of de-escalating the situation. And so when the officer grabbed the 13-year-old and pulled him 3 or 4 houses down, and he had called 911, even the chief of police of Anaheim agreed that he should have waited for Anaheim officers to arrive, but he took the law into his own hands. This is a moment of truth. Are you going to discipline this officer? Are you going to fire him? Or are you just going to whitewash it all and let him continue to patrol the streets? As too many officers continue to patrol the streets after they commit excessive use of force.
Thank you, sir. I think that's it for the comments on the chief's report. Now we're public comments, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
We have 16 comment cards.
Okay, we'll give them each the 2 minutes.
First, we have Oscar, followed by Akili.
We've finished everything. Oh, I held A for Matt. Yeah. I think I'm just gonna, should I go ahead?
Commissioner's asking if public comments have to be last, Carlos.
Oh, yeah.
No, they do not.
Okay. Just remind me, because we will do 2A.
Okay. All right. So we have a total of 16 public comment cards, starting with Oscar, followed by Akili and Paula Minor. Correction, that's 17 comment cards.
Okay.
Hi, I wanted to remind you that in Inglewood, the Inglewood police have not reported anything about the killing of Keisha Michael and Marquentin Sandlin, who were killed by SWAT. I'm not sure if that's LAPD SWAT or not. And they've been waiting over a year for that report. So, and also at a meeting we were at this weekend, we heard of a John, I forgot what his name was, but it was a young man who was killed in LAPD custody as well. He actually died in 2009. And what his mother found out was that the autopsy report that she received did not account for the physical beating that she could visibly see, and she had pictures to prove it. So she had her own independent autopsy done on this case, which was supposed to be a suicide. They found out that when the medical examiners got there, he was already in rigor mortis. And also, during the independent autopsy, they found that he had injuries to his kidney, to his pancreas. He had a blow to the head that ended up in a blood clot in his head. That was all ignored by your autopsy. But she got that in the independent autopsy. And that sounds very similar to what we saw in the case of Waukesha Wilson, because he also had he had a noose around his neck when they found him. And they made it seem like he hung himself in jail. And that's exactly what we see in the case of Waukesha Wilson. And the fact that you kept denying any evidence to that mother for 10 months gives us more of a probability of running into these cases without them knowing. She might not have had the money for an independent autopsy, so she can't get that information that the other mother had. That's all I have. Thanks.
Next.
That would be Akili is next. And I want to talk to you about the testimony I heard Saturday at the Human Relations Commission about parents who have lost their children and how they were treated by the LAPD and the sheriff. I'll talk about the LAPD. One of the things that needs to happen is a policy needs to be developed to handle the families and provisions for counseling and support for these families. They are fully dismissed as if nothing ever happened. But yet they grieve, and they grieve by themselves in most cases at the hands of a public agency that we pay for. So the same money that I'm contributing 54% so that y'all can, even though our statistics are down, so you can get half the budget, a portion of that budget ought to go to these families for counseling, for grieving, and support, so that the death that they suffered at the hands of the police doesn't at least continue to affect them. Our city is hemorrhaging now from all of the lawsuits. So if you're going to do that, you might as well take care of the families too. So you all should look at a policy that deals with support for the families who are victimized by the LAPD. And that's something that 3 votes could do. So let's start taking a look at it.
You want to call the names of the speakers as they come up?
Sure. Paula Miner, followed by Walter and Audrey George.
Okay.
Good morning. One thing I want to mention before I talk about a couple of other things is that publicly we would like to advocate, and I know the commission cannot advocate for this, but that all families who have an individual who is killed either in custody or an officer-involved shooting must have independent autopsies. We're going to be talking to groups who support families and who support people's rights so that funds can be raised, that those families can immediately access independent autopsies. The information that keeps coming forward is there's just one side of the story, and often that side appears glaringly flawed. So we will be advocating for that, and we will be attempting to raise funds so that every single victim of LAPD violence and killing can get an independent autopsy. And then second, again, I would like to request this commission, as we've been requesting repeatedly, to have a change in the time and location of the regular meetings so that more members of the community, broader members of the community, can participate. Many people have commented they are working, they're in school, they have responsibilities that occur at 9:30 in the morning. Many other cities, most cities, have their commission meetings when those meetings are supposed to be for the public and for the interest of the public. You know, our commission has become insulated and appears to be only for themselves and LAPD and forget that they're supposed to be for the community. So again, we need more accessible time and location. And I also want to comment on Officer Ferguson in Anaheim. He was wrong, but again, he is a victim of this flawed system. If he had had better training, this de-escalation training, the films we see and talk about in here, do not get to the officer on the street. Okay? Even the psychological evaluations do not get there. So you guys are complicit as well as he is.
Thank you.
Next, we have Walter. I'm sorry, I don't understand the last name. Beckert, maybe?
Is that you, sir?
Bechtel.
Bechtel.
My last name is Bechtel.
Welcome, sir.
Yeah, hi. I want to talk about this letter I got from the board a couple of months ago. I got a duplicate concerning the hotel I live in, the Drake Hotel, and a problem we're having there. It says that Captain Mark Riena was contacted. He never contacted me. Nobody's ever contacted me. I don't know what's going on, and the problem still exists there. I'm hearing a lot of problems here. It sounds like I don't have anything to do with that. It's just I wanted to say that if you told them something, that's where it stopped. In other words, it appears as though everything is going in one ear and out the other. Somebody is not paying attention and really just thinks it says stupid Board of Police Commissioners. Maybe if you made it a little more clear that what you're saying has meaning, except for if you told them something like, it doesn't make any difference, just kind of look into it a little bit or something. But I should have been contacted by somebody, and nobody has done that. So, again, this is about the Drake Hotel and some problems we've been having there. A continual problem of a person who's stalking me He's observing me. He's trying to harass me. He appears to have known about my grandfather who was murdered. He was the captain of the sheriff's department in 1950. And I don't know why. I don't understand why the numerous police officers I'm trying to the department I'm trying to contact. Nobody's is trying to say anything to me.
Sir, why don't you hang around and we'll have somebody speak with you today? Okay, just hang around. Chief?
Next, we have Audrey George, followed by Miriam Nicole, and
Yeah, we'll have someone from our staff, from Chief of Staff's office, follow up.
Okay.
I want to talk
Good
about
morning.
something. Okay. I want to talk about something that sounded like a good idea. Establishing a civilian oversight commission for the LAPD. So first of all, let's assume that you're establishing this body because you have a police force that's respected by all citizens of your community. But then why would you need to have a civilian oversight? So you probably have this body in the first place because the residents of your city actually fear and distrust the police. Maybe they even feel that police officers profile them racially and abuse their power in ways that cause people in their communities to avoid any encounter and interaction for fear of their lives. That's probably a safe bet. So it's a great idea then to tell folks who want to talk to the commissioners face to face that they can only do so in a room that's right in the middle of the headquarters of the very police force they fear and distrust. Right, exactly. People who walk the streets every day fearful of their safety from armed officers should walk through doorways and hallways lined with those armed officers into a room that is also lined with armed officers and totally feel at ease in speaking their minds in short 2-minute blasts of time, just inches away from the guns that are so often trained upon them in the streets. So this commission, of course, would want to hold meetings when the attendance would be the highest. I mean, if the venue is going to be so intimidating, at least you could mitigate that by encouraging attendance, by making it convenient to as many people as possible, right? Say that you were in the mindset of and sincerely hoping for a good turnout, like if you were planning a fundraiser or a celebration. You'd, of course, pick a time when most of your target audience would be available. Like right during a normal workday? I don't think so. Your 9:30 on a Tuesday morning fundraiser would then be a bust, most likely, and your celebration event would be pretty lonely. So what's this about 9:30 on Tuesday morning? Sounds like an intentional plan to ensure the smallest possible representation from the general public, right?
Thank you. Next, please.
we have Miriam Nicole, followed by Melina Abdullah and Tut Hayes.
Next, please.
Miriam Nicole.
You helped us,
No.
right? No, she doesn't count. You got resources or not?
There's no more speakers?
Miriam Nicole.
Okay.
Not present.
Not here. Next.
Melina Abdullah, followed by Tut Hayes and Rosalie Handful.
So I just want to go back to what it is we're looking for. And I know that you all dismiss what we say. I think that Audrey, though, points to something. You have a really committed group of people who would change their work schedules, change their school schedules, and make accommodations. And we recognize we have the privilege to shift our schedules in order to be here. And instead of pretending like, you know, we're some group of folks that should be ignored, I think you have the most engaged population here, and we should be treated with respect. So I want to remind you about why we're here and what we've been demanding for the last couple of years. One, we're demanding that Charlie Beck be fired. Maybe that's a job for you, who knows? But he got to go. Charlie Beck has to go. Fire Charlie Beck. That's our number one demand. Number two, and Mama Paula started to speak to this, we want a reparations policy for the families of the people who were killed and abused by the police. There's no way they should be having to deal with mental health issues, deal with burying their children alone, and a family liaison just doesn't get it. We need real resources for the families. Number 3, we want a police commission that actually has expertise in this, that are community folks who understand what police abuse and brutality looks like and will advocate for the people instead of just be apologists for the mayor. We don't care how much money you've donated to him. That should not entitle you to a seat on this commission. Number 4, we want this commission meeting moved to a time and location when most people can make. This is ridiculous. We're surrounded by police. We're told we can't sit in the first 2 rows. Then the rule is changed, and then it's changed back. We need this to be accessible and community driven. And then finally, we need town hall meetings for Black people. And we understand that there are other things and other issues that people want to talk about now, but Black people are still being assaulted and attacked and brutalized and occupied by your police force. And so we need to have real, honest conversations. And so we want those things. We're not going to stop wanting those things. We're not going to stop demanding those things regardless of what you do and how you try to lock us out or turn off our mics. So those are our demands, and they're going to continue to be.
Mr. Tut Hayes.
This is an offer you won't like to accept. We're going to bring crime fighting close to home. Home being this particular room with this dais and these people. They're criminals. They're outright criminals. It's a state law called the Ralph M. Brown Act. Police officers don't pay attention to that. They look at the penal code, things like that, evidence code perhaps. But the Brown Act has criminal penalties. And these people have violated these act provisions on a grand scale. And guess what? Top cops that sat here and let it occur without a murmur, without a word. Because they were busy criminalizing and penalizing and abusing people in their lobby and various other ways. Anyway, here's what the Brown Act says. It says, the Act provides criminal misdemeanor penalties for certain violations. Specifically, the Act punishes attendance by a member of the body at a meeting where action is taken in violation of the Act, and where the member intends to deprive the public of information which the member knows the public is entitled to. When Commissioner McLean Hill began to speak about something, and she went on for about 5 minutes, and then she was followed by Commissioner Soboroff, then followed by the President. That wasn't on the agenda. They can't talk about anything that's not on the agenda. But here's where it gets difficult. I come up here because I say, maybe we can kind of balance this out, correct it, maybe. So I want to speak on what they spoke on, because they can't talk about anything we can't talk about. So I got handcuffed and taken off to jail. Okay? So when I attempt to pursue what the Brown Act says I can pursue, because they violated what the Brown Act says they cannot do.
Thanks, Mr. Hayes. We'll continue.
We have
Mr. Hunt. Go ahead, Mr. Hunt.
We have Rosalie Handful,
Okay.
followed by Jason Black and Karen Hilfman.
Soberoff's got the gavel. Careful.
Stay on topic, please.
Hi.
Good morning.
Thank you for the opportunity to let me be here and let me beg for help. I'm being most criminally destroyed, totally terrible, blatantly corrupt, and nobody does anything. Please, besides letting me speak for the 2 minutes, I'd like to get help. And the people I'm complaining about, there should be a criminal investigation about them. They totally destroyed my life. I'm living where I'm living in a rent-control apartment over 20 years. And the management is totally, most viciously, notoriously corrupt. They do every single thing that I shouldn't be in the apartment. One thing they did is they flushed from the street, from outside, sulfuric acid into my bathtub. I didn't know it. I took a bath. I'm totally, totally destroyed. I thought I was going to die in the bathtub. I couldn't get out. It was like quicksand pushing me down. My insides are burned out. Everything is affected. And this is not the only thing they do. Continuously, every chance they have. And every time they send in a handyman, they only send somebody who would do what they tell them because they're desperate for a job. These are not responsible, reputable people, and they're desperate for a job, and they do everything that he says. Total, total corruption. They made my house full of asbestos and put the asbestos all over the house. A few months later, they made it full of lead. It's an old building. They scraped off every wall and put everything.
Thank you, ma'am. Do you have something in writing you can leave with us?
House.
Thank you.
They wouldn't put a cover.
Next.
Then the time is up. Could I please have someone to talk to about
Sure.
this problem?
And leave us a note in writing or something.
Did you say that's enough? Okay, thank you.
Sure, yeah, don't worry, we'll handle it. Next speaker.
We have Jason Black, followed by Karen Hilfman and Tiffany Guerra.
Jason, welcome, sir. You have somebody to talk to her?
Yes, someone will follow up.
Ma'am, if you'll hold around. Okay.
I just want to reiterate the request to move the venue and the time for this meeting. I think there's a lot of anxiety people have about decisions being made by the government, by police right now. I think those fears can be assuaged by transparency. I think for working people and students taking time away from their jobs and schools, it's very difficult. It's a prohibitive location for many people. And many people I know would like to participate in these conversations. They'd like to share their point of view. They'd like to offer their suggestions for improved relations. And they'd like to ask questions whose answers I think they're entitled to hear. So I'd just like you to please consider the requests that these conversations aren't happening in a vacuum, and the public feels that the goal is to enable their participation and not discourage it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Karen Hilfman.
I'd also like to talk a little bit about holding meetings in a rarefied and protected environment. Community policing without representation is occupation, and that's what's happening in many parts of the city today. The Civilian Oversight Board, responsible for representation, continues to hold its meetings on a weekday morning in the belly of the LAPD. It's not rational, and it's not acceptable in a democracy. The other thing I want to talk about is Kevin Ferguson, and we all sat here and saw the videos and the report about de-escalation training, and it's just absurd to then watch an LAPD officer completely escalate a situation. And it started out with his sexist obscenities to a 13-year-old child. That was escalation. Somebody here talked about child endangerment. That's minimal. I saw the video. Everybody, I think, saw the video. It was assault, and I think it was also assault with a deadly weapon. And I think you need to take this seriously. He's not unique among members of the police force, but he can be an example of what needs to be done to repair the situation.
Thank you. Sure. What's your name, please?
Miriam.
Okay, thank you.
I, too, wanted to speak on Kevin Ferguson. That was really scary because I, like we saw in the video, sexist language. I too am brown, and I saw a black boy, defend his brown brother. And it's just sad because I live kind of closer to Anaheim, and I know how Anaheim works. There's a lot of racist people, and I just don't understand. Well, I already know how you guys work. We already, this past summer, camped out 2 months for Riddell Jones, and you guys probably didn't even fire that man, whoever killed her. And so we know that you're not going to fire Kevin Ferguson. And even though this is a waste of time, I still want to, and I'm sick, but I still want to come and express, because it's my right. But it's just really sad that just the littlest thing you guys aren't even going to fire him for. And I just really hope that it can start there. Huh? They are going to fire him. Well, we'll see. Because you guys keep saying that you want to, work things out and do things better. And I think it should start there. And then you guys could work on the bigger things if you can, even though it probably won't happen. And yeah, dang, I'm really sick right now, but it's okay. But I wish Matt and Beck were here. I know they're busy protecting their own, and I know that was a tragedy 20 years ago. But I don't know. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Tiffany Guerra, followed by Ahmed Khan and Amy Davis.
So I'm here to talk about item 2A, which I missed. It's the less lethal force review.
Yeah, you can do it now, but we're also going to call item 2A, and you can do it again on 2A, whichever one you want. We haven't heard 2A
We delayed it
yet.
to the end. Okay, I will talk now. Okay. So the problem with, I read that report, and the problem with talking about, excuse me, the problem with talking about tasers as a less than lethal option is that they do kill people all the time. My big concern also with that report is that you reviewed the different types of weapon, and taser is the number one device that is used by your officers currently. But what we find out at the end is that it doesn't appear you have any policies in place talking about telling your officers when they should not be used. And the problem with that is that when tasers are used for more than 3 5-second intervals, for instance, that can kill a person. When the darts land in the wrong parts of someone's body, that can kill a person. And they have killed people. It shouldn't be used on people who are in restraints, which has been done by your officers in the past, and that has killed people. So you're doing this review on how tasers work and how you can continue to make them even more accessible to people, and how you can make sure every single officer has them. And then at the end of the report, one of the recommendations is, let's consider changing the policy so that people are not overusing them to kill people. So this reveals to us your mentality and your culture and your priorities, which tells us that your priorities is to arm your officers first, and then worry about if they understand how to use them, or if you all even understand how they should be using their weapons. So this reveals the culture and your backwards thinking. It's disappointing as usual. I'm at a loss for words.
Next, we have Ahmed Khan.
Tomorrow is March 1, and tomorrow is the 2nd year anniversary of the murder of Charlie Africa. Remember Charlie Africa? Yes. Charlie Africa, an undocumented immigrant of African descent, a homeless man with a known history of mental illness, murdered by the LAPD. Now, what's wrong with this picture? An undocumented immigrant, a homeless person, a black man of African descent, murdered by LAPD. This brings the whole equation together. And what is going on is that when people are speaking about Kevin Ferguson is doing it because he can. Because the guy who murdered Charlie Africa, Officer Martinez, is still trolling Skid Row. Yes, he is still out in Skid Row pulling people out of their tents. So whether Kevin Ferguson is an off-duty cop or an on-duty cop, And I'm really, quite frankly, sick and tired of hearing people talking about more training or de-escalation. Because what it does is it gives them an opportunity to get more money for more training. No more training can change that. Something that is flawed by design, there's an intentionality to murder. There's an intentionality to kill. There's an intentionality to harass. There's an intentionality to completely dominate and subjugate. A lot of BS we are hearing about ICE raids and LAPD. That's all bullshit. They're protecting themselves under Special Order 40. Ever heard of the fusion centers? Ever heard of RACER? Ever heard of their information sharing environment? All of that information is going to ICE. All of that information is going to Department of Justice. So none of this garnishing. And Cynthia McLean Hill, we were supposed to get copies. We were supposed to get copies here and to the rest of the board. When people come in, there's nothing that we can look at. People are talking about time and location. So if this body can't even get us printed copies of what the reports are, what kind of power do you yield?
Next.
Right? The last thing I would say is that we don't even know what your plan is. What needs to happen is that each one of you needs to present a plan that why are you here? Why are you here?
Next speaker.
Because
Next we have
one demand that people didn't put out that you need to step down. You need to step down. Or let us know.
Next, we have Amy Davis, followed by Red Chief Hunt and Luis Carrillo.
I'd like to talk about Anaheim. I just wonder, obviously I'm sure you watched the video when it came out. I just wonder if you watched it with the perspective of, man, this is going to look really bad on Monday or Tuesday when people show up to talk about it. Or if you thought about it, wow, I have a kid, man, I'd be mad. And I think that's important because how you look at that video, what lens you look at it through is going to determine how you act. And you're part of the public, at least you're supposed to be, not you, but appreciate you being here anyway. But you know what I mean? Like if you're looking at that video and you're saying, how are we going to get around this? What are we going to do about this? It's going to look really bad. Or we're going to say, wow, that's not acceptable. We're going to do something about it. I think you need to look at it from that lens. And I don't have children, but man, my parents taught me that if a strange man grabbed a hold of me and wouldn't let go, I kick and scream. If I have a knife, I stab him, I run away. You don't stand there and say, well, maybe he's an undercover cop and he's detaining me for 10 minutes until the cops show up. No one teaches their children that. You don't tell your kids that. If a strange man grabbed your child, you'd be like, you better do something. And, you know, it's a 10-minute long video. Maybe there's something before and after. Maybe he identified himself as a cop. I think based on what the child was saying, probably not. I think any reasonable person knows that. So why not? Why not say, hey, I'm detaining you. I'm an LA police officer. I'm detaining you. Stop resisting arrest. Why wasn't that said? It's very easy. He's done it before, surely, hopefully. And then maybe the kid would have had an opportunity to say, oh, you're not a strange man dragging me across 3 lawns to come kill me in a house or rape me or do whatever else strange, crazy people do. And it's just unacceptable to look at that and to say that this is okay. And I just want to bring up this coffee with cops thing. People don't want to have coffee with you. They want you to hold your police accountable for their actions. This is a great opportunity to do that.
Red Chief Hunt.
Shit doesn't make any sense. You run across somebody's grass and you get shot at. It's dumbfounded. You need to be fired. Now, what I really want to talk about it is on November 10th, I was arrested out here in the lobby for attending a meeting after somebody else made a disturbance. I went to court. It was never prosecuted. That's the second time they done that. They wrote me a ticket one time that says, fuck white niggers too. It cost the city $215,000 for that goddamn ticket. It says, fuck white niggers too. Here's the proof of that. Now, here's my bill, like Ted said about the Brown Act. There is such thing as called a Brown Act, and it's going to cost you guys $775,000 for my attorneys, which is 4 best attorneys in the goddamn country, who's already done this 3 fucking times. And I'm not taking no for an answer. It holds Matt Johnson and Chief Beck responsible, the president and the chief of police. And if you look at the page with Barry Sanders in the LA Times for the 215, he put his head down because he knows my attorneys are very good. There is such thing called the Brown Act. You guys need to follow up. Even the city attorney doesn't even know the Brown Act. If he did, he would be interfering in this meeting when people got interrupted and said something. But he doesn't really understand. So, but now it's going to cost you guys another $1.5 million. And you guys just borrowed $70,000 to pay off these lawsuits. So, Ms. McLean, I'm going to give this to you so that you'll understand it, so you won't get sued.
You can for 2A.
Yes. So he can't tell us that we can't take a comment card.
Yeah,
right?
I don't know if he understood, but for 2A, will you let me finish? Okay? Okay. It doesn't matter. What I'm telling you is, sir,
We have a right to the damn comment card. Put the comment card on
Melina, stop. I don't know you by any name, but quiet. Sir,
so
2A, we will take comment cards on 2A. Next speaker.
Okay, no, wait, I get my 50 seconds.
Go ahead, take your time.
Yeah, you cut me off.
No, we're not done with that.
Okay, but anyways.
No, I think there are more.
Huh?
We have.
No, but I mean, I still had seconds.
We have 2 more comment cards and 1 late one.
Okay, so we have 3. 2 more, and we'll allow the late one. And then we'll go to 2A. And you can put in comment cards for 2A.
Yeah, I just want to say that, like, I'm going to make a comment after public comment. I just wanted to advise the chair.
Well, can I get my last my thought?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Anyways, it's a shame that the city doesn't really understand the Brown Act and the Constitution of the United States, because that's the reason why it was put here. In any matter, Chief Beck and Matt Johnson is going to be held responsible in the draft and the lawsuit. So Stephen Rohde and Parker and Steinberry will be sending you guys a final draft pretty soon, and it's not a joke.
Okay. Next speaker.
Next speaker, we have Luis Carrillo, followed by Pastor Q and Michael Carrillo.
Okay.
Luis Carrillo, not present. Pastor Q.
And then there's one more. There was a late.
The late one is Miguel Carrillo.
Okay.
Or Michael Carrillo, I apologize.
Okay.
Pastor Q, again. Meeting with police. We talked about that earlier. I heard you guys talk about meeting with police. Meeting with police is not going to fix the problem. That's like with Donald Trump. All of a sudden, he's abused every minority group in America, and now he wants to give money to historically black colleges. We can't be bought. We know the system is not broken. We know it's working the way it was supposed to work. In order to fix this, we must create a new model that makes this one obsolete. I want to read a text from the Bible. For he himself is our peace, who has made the two groups one and has destroyed the barrier, the dividing wall of hostility, by setting aside in his flesh the law with its commands and regulation. His purpose was to create in himself one new humanity out of two, thus making peace. In one body to reconcile both of them to God through the cross, by which he put to death their hostility. If the law is biased, we need to get rid of it. If the law is unjust and is dividing us, we need to get rid of it. Looking at the civilian oversight of the sheriff department, because the people wanted that civilian oversight, they don't meet in a police building. They meet at the Bob Hope Center. And so, even though I still don't trust the system itself because it was designed not to work, at least they're making an effort there, right? So we can give them E for effort and not A for movement, right? Because movement doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have results. And so we are here again and again and again, and will continue to be here again and again and again because the system is broken.
Okay, is that the end of public comment?
The last comment card is for Michael Carrillo.
Is he here? Okay,
Not present.
We'll close the public comment, and now we will go to item 2A.
Excuse me, I did want to say something briefly with respect to the multiple comments about time and location of our meetings. Only to say that there is not a single thing that I have heard more frequently since I've been on the commission, both in this room and more importantly out in the community. And while it's not on the agenda and as a result not a matter that we can discuss at this moment, I will certainly be asking our executive director to begin to explore ways that we can address both time and location of these meetings. As a citizen oversight committee, it is difficult to continue to maintain the position that 9:30 Tuesday morning at PAB is meeting our responsibility to be accessible to the community. And then with respect to and trying to stay within the confines of the Brown Act and our meeting agenda, I neglected to make an observation following the chief's comment with respect to the matter in Anaheim, while acknowledging that that is a matter that will come before the commission. I do want to say that, like many people who serve on this board, I am a parent and would not be at all comfortable, and in fact would be outraged were that my child on that video, and certainly understand the significant public outcry that has resulted in the face of the video. I will say this, however, if I believe that what I saw on that video represented this department's training and this department's officers in mass, I would consider my time here to be futile and would leave the board. I don't hold that view. And that's, I think, all I can say and want to say about that at this time.
Okay, thanks. I just want to comment on the... I just want to comment. We have had, I know in my first 2 years, we had a number, in fact, once a month, we had a meeting in the community that were complementary to the Tuesday morning meetings, and I thought that they were very valuable.
That's a lie. That was not an official.
Yeah, they were official meetings. Okay.
I realize we're like violating all the rules, but there is a process underway with the executive director, myself, and many members that are in this room, as you well know. And we're meeting in a couple weeks to make a plan for meetings out in the community at a time and location that's more convenient and more conducive to community input. So thank you for raising that and continuing to make that a priority.
Okay,
I agree 100%.
Let's bring everybody up for 2A. 2A. Who's the staff on 2A?
Commissioner, that would be my staff.
Okay. You want to bring them up?
They're coming up right now.
Okay, good.
Commissioner from my office.
There is no meeting in 2 weeks, sir. There is none.
The meeting in 2 weeks is there a meeting in 2 weeks? There's a meeting here in 2 weeks, correct?
If I make...
Will you let him answer the question? Thanks. Okay, Mr. T-Fank.
The meeting the commissioner was referring to was an internal staff meeting with myself, organized by Commissioner Goldsmith. There is no public meeting in 2 weeks that she was speaking about. No, sir. Why not? Because it's a private office meeting, sir.
Okay, go ahead. Okay, we're going to open on 2A, please.
Yes, thank you, commissioners. As the commission will recall, this is a report that was requested by the commissioners to look at less lethal systems and the way the department is using it and staffing it in the field. I first wanted to thank Chief Moore and Chief Villegas and their teams for working with us on this issue. There was a lot of data that we were going through, as well as trying to be current on what the department was doing to improve these systems and their applications. So I want to thank them for that. The principal architects for this report from my office is Special Investigator Alexa Daniel-Schbal, and under the supervision of Django Sibley, who's the Assistant Inspector General. And I will let them present it. We are, of course, available for any questions you might have at the conclusion.
Good morning.
Morning.
Alexa Daniel-Schbal with the Office of the Inspector General. This morning, I'd like to provide just a brief overview of the report you have before you, and then we're available to answer any questions. As the Inspector General said, this is the latest review in a series that you directed our office to complete regarding the LAPD's use of force. And as he also mentioned, it focuses on the use of less lethal force by LAPD officers. Part of the Commission's direction to us was to review whether these tools are being deployed and used effectively in the field, particularly with respect to incidents involving individuals with mental illness or individuals who are armed with weapons other than firearms, such as knives. Based on this direction, we chose to focus on 3 weapon systems that can be deployed from a distance. So that includes the taser, the beanbag shotgun, and the 40mm less lethal launcher. As you see in the report, we provided an overview of these 3 tools. Then we described the recent steps the department has taken to increase not only their availability to officers, but also their accessibility when officers are at the scene of a critical incident. To help the public and the Commission better understand how these tools are being used by officers in the field, we've included summaries of some of the relevant policies and standards, and we've also included a brief description of the related training, both in the academy and once officers are working in the field. Many of the department's efforts described in this report are in progress, so our office will continue to monitor them as they move forward. We'll also continue to evaluate the use of less lethal force in our office's reviews of use of force incidents. As we continue to work with the department to identify and implement additional improvements in these areas, we'll also evaluate the success of some of these efforts to determine how they've gone and also report our findings back to the Commission. And finally, at the end of the report, you'll see there are 2 recommendations for your consideration. The first relates to reviewing some of the national guidelines and standards that have come out related to less lethal force policies to determine whether there's any improvements or enhancements the department can be making in that area. And finally, the second recommendation relates to the LAPD's use of force training. We want to ensure that it includes instruction for officers in how to work effectively as a team and leverage all the resources the department has tried to get out to officers in the field when they're at an incident. So with that, we'll answer any questions you have.
I just want to go over the numbers again carefully, and then we can ask questions. On page 2B, just want to read through this carefully. In 2015, there were 1.5 million contacts to LAPD. And of that 1.5 million contacts, 0.13% resulted in non-categorical use of force and categorical use of force. And of that 1.5 million contacts, there were 92 categorical uses of force. Am I reading that correctly?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Other comments and questions? Let's review your recommendations first, carefully. Do you want to go through your recommendations and next steps?
I can certainly do that.
Okay, let's do that. Let's do it carefully because I think it mirrors a number of the statements that we've already heard.
Would you like to start with the recommendations?
Yeah.
Okay. So the first one would direct the department to review national guidelines and standards, such as those put out by the Department of Justice, the President's Task Force on 21st Century Policing, and the Police Executive Research Forum. And some of we just gave an example of what some of those recommendations have been. The examples we give are policies relating to tasers and using them either on vulnerable populations, such as young children or elderly persons, and also individuals who are handcuffed. There are also other recommendations related to restricting.
But are you stating or insinuating that that's something that we're not doing? It's not a policy. We're not doing enough of.
Commissioner, actually, what this is actually consistent with what the Commission has been doing so far with use of force. Is obviously looking at what we do looking at working with the department and trying to figure out best practices.
Okay.
And then always keeping an eye to what may be available out nationally that may
Good.
improve
No, I
what we
agree.
do. And so this is really consistent with the approach that the commission has taken with the use of force, which is to look inward, then look at some of the issues, the surrounding departments, and then lastly, look at best practices nationally to ensure that we're constantly evolving. And these are all conversations that we work closely with
Okay.
the chiefs.
Yeah.
Commissioner, we're very supportive of recommendation number 1. We're moving in that direction already. We had training division staff as well as use of force division Captain John McMahon, who was most recently in Dallas. I'm scheduling a trip to Henderson. I was recently in Austin, Texas, and all for the purpose of identifying best practices. We will be holding a PERF, for lack of a better phrase, town hall, where we'll exemplify our de-escalation strategies. All of this will be a part of this review of national guidelines and standards, and we are working with the Inspector General's office to ensure that we're collaboratively moving forward to make sure that we're the best in the country.
Okay, good. Keep going.
So the second recommendation
Mhm.
is similar, kind of given the efforts the department has already made. We just want to ensure that the training reflects and includes all the resources that are being provided to officers to make sure officers are trained in how to leverage all those things and make them work together. And I think some of the training already includes it, but I just want to reemphasize that.
Okay. Questions, comments?
I want to thank the Inspector General's office for the thorough report on this issue that's vitally important to us, and ask Assistant Chief Villegas, thank you for supporting the recommendations. Can you tell us how long it'll take you to implement these?
Well, the actual review is, we've already started the review, so we'll continue on with that. I think that the PERF forum that we're going to have is scheduled to be in April, thereabouts, so about 3 months. I would suspect about 90 days.
Great, thank you.
And Commissioner, as we had mentioned earlier, there's been a lot of collaboration with the IG's office and Chief Moore and Chief Villegas' team, so we will continue to do that and work with them and keep the commission apprised.
Thank you.
Okay. Do we have public comments on this item?
We have 8 public comment cards.
Okay.
Starting with Dara Parsi, followed by Kel, I apologize, I can't read the last name, Hutsami, K. Hutsami, and Oscar.
Morning, sir.
Morning to you. So I want to talk about the increasing politicization of the police department and how that can possibly tie into use of lethal force. So I don't understand why the police department, whether it's the LAPD or whatever police department you may have in your city, is becoming politicized. The Fraternal Order of Police, a police unit that claims to represent over 300,000 cops, made a presidential endorsement. How does that make any sense whatsoever? And to make it worse, they endorsed Donald Trump, a blathering bigot. And what doesn't make sense to me is that, from my perspective, I've always viewed the police department as a social service, to protect and to serve. The operative word being serve. Serve us, serve the community. Not to be a politicized, weaponized organization for Donald Trump to use to kill innocent black men, young black men, to shoot a gun in front of a bunch of 13-year-olds, potentially injuring them. And I'm wondering why the police commission hasn't stood up and said, hey, police officers, you can't be endorsing candidates, especially if these candidates are outspoken about their hatred of minorities. How does that make any sense whatsoever? And how can the community trust the police when they're clearly in favor of the racist candidate? Right? Okay, how can they? When I was arrested on November 10th, along with 150 other people, for sitting at a park outside of City Hall, which was complete and utter BS, the cop who arrested me, he was a fine guy, but he proceeded to get into an argument with me about why Donald Trump was a good guy and why you shouldn't be out here protesting him. I'm sorry, sir. You should just keep your mouth shut and don't tell me about why Donald Trump, that a-hole, is a good guy.
Hi, Hutsami.
I spent quite a bit of time in Skid Row, and I know those people as just unfortunate conditions they're in, but they are full human beings just as much as you are. Every single one of you. Officer Martinez needs to be off the force before he kills another black homeless man or woman or anyone else in Skid Row or anywhere else. Off the force, fired. Charles Cuning, killing and murder was totally unnecessary. There were 4 or 5 other police around there. He was on the ground. They could have tasered his leg or something, you know, but he chose to shoot and kill Charlie Cuny, a homeless man, black, and an immigrant. Immigrants, undocumented immigrants are full human beings. They come to work. Donald Trump's full of it when he calls them criminals. He himself, you know. So he needs to be off the force. Tomorrow is the anniversary of his killing. And we need less police in Skid Row. You guys see black people and you load that area up with police as if they're all criminals. All right.
Want to give us the names of the next?
Next, we have Oscar, followed by Paula Miner and Tiffany Guerra.
I think before we give the officers in LAPD any new weapons, we should figure out how to remove any officers like Kevin Ferguson that are ill-trained and do not have the patience and common sense to be trusted with patrolling our neighborhoods with or without weapons. Before we continue to arm our officers with more weapons, we should replace this commission with independent investigators that can actually help us in providing accountability for the inappropriate actions taken by some of these officers. Before we continue to arm our officers, we need to make sure they know the laws. Ezell Ford was stopped illegally, which led to his death. You found the stop out of policy, but you found the shooting him in the back at such close range that he had a gun print on his back. You found that in policy. Will this be the case with these tasers? Will we continue to be stopped illegally and then have to face violence from your police, but then only get accountability for the stop? We refuse to be governed by your violent, irresponsible police organization, and you do not have our trust in patrolling our communities.
Paula Miner.
If my understanding is clear, this Inspector General review is a result of Matt Johnson's request in November of 2015 to review as a result of the report presented on use of force. Is that not correct? That this began in 2015, and we're just now getting reports of about how maybe it could be implemented in 2017. Again, it's an example of how flawed the system is. How long and how things are discussed over and over again. It seems like it's meaningless almost to even discuss it here because it never gets on the street. You know, officers do not get the training we talk about in here. And I do want to comment on, we say, okay, they'll be trained. These are three weapons that they now already have: tasers, beanbags, and the launcher for the rubber bullets. We understand that somehow we hope they've been trained on it. It's not clear what it is you expect them to do differently, because maybe practical application, they should have been doing this differently. And the comments that we get about some of the training, and I have talked to someone who received training at the academy is that some of the training on the things that don't occur in the academy, if they occur at the Museum of Tolerance or if they occur in a different setting, don't seem to gain the level of importance with the person receiving the training. So again, I say this system is flawed. We continue to talk about stuff, and it just seems like our commission is continuing that kind of effort, and that is not the effort that is intended for this commission.
Miriam Nicole.
I'm going to give you your last warning, sir.
So are you going to apologize?
I gave you your last warning, sir.
So, yeah, to go off what Tiffany was saying, are you going to apologize? No? You just yelled at Hamid, but you can't apologize to Melina? You're just going to stare at me? I know I look pretty, thanks. Just got a new wig. Anyways.
If by using your first name was insulting to you, I apologize.
No, that's not what was insulting, how you spoke
to her.
No, I am. It wasn't about you using her first name.
Please.
It was the way you used her name and was yelling at her.
Okay. Next.
So are you going to apologize? No? Oh, my gosh. Yeah, so I think that you should apologize. Like Tiffany was saying, it models how you guys treat black women, even though you do have a black woman on your commission board. That's cool. But we've seen how you treat black women. Riddell Jones, Waukesha Wilson. Even me, the way you spoke to me, I'm a black woman too. So you should apologize to all the black women in here. All the black women, please stand up. We need an apology from Steve Soboroff right now. So, waiting. Are you just going to stare at me? Because that's really creepy. Like, so you can yell at us, but you can't apologize. Really? Dang, that sucks. All right, whatever.
Okay. Next speaker, please.
We have Tut Hayes and one late comment card from Reverend James Thomas.
Mr. Hayes?
He's coming around, sir.
Okay.
Chief Joe Gates said there's no such thing as a less than lethal tool in the hands of an LAPD officer. Flashbangs have killed people. Stun guns have killed people. Everything you put in the hands of a police officer somehow manages to be less than lethal. We're celebrating the 20th anniversary of the Northridge shootout, where those men had not bulletproof vests, but armored vests. There's a difference, a very distinct difference. And so the LAPD went to hardware stores and gun shops to get more weapons, more powerful weapons. Spies use weapons that shoot pins, like a safety pin or needle, and they kill with those weapons. The Marine Corps is an excellent branch of the service for one particular reason: marksmanship, accuracy with their weapons. 170 rounds were fired in the Dormer thing, and not one of those rounds hit those two newspaper ladies because there was no accuracy. So accuracy is what's important with a beanbag as well as a assault weapon. And incidentally, assault weapon simply means it fires a lot of bullets. It doesn't mean it's accurate. So the thing is, less than lethal is a misnomer, because in reality it doesn't work out that way. Actually, in the hands of a police officer, it can be lethal. At MacArthur Park, May Day, woman lost her eye because they were firing less than lethal rounds in their shotgun, but it put out an eye, and it could have killed her had it penetrated her eye.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, we got one more late comment. So we have 2 late comment cards.
Sure.
It's going to be Reverend James Thomas and Ahmed Khan.
Okay.
Hello, sir. First of all, I'd like to say, just on behalf of people who care about black women, I am sorry, Dr. Molina. I am sorry for every disrespectful remark and behavior that I have personally witnessed happen to women of color in this room, simply because you're standing up for your children. So I deeply apologize. I would also like to remind you that this is the last day of Black History Month, and I know that there are various draconian policies that come through your commission. And I want to remind you that suffering is not something that is uncommon to black people. It also is not something that is uncommon to our Savior, Jesus Christ. But what is true about suffering, that while you may think that you can force us into compliance, what you are actually doing is making us stronger. You're making us stronger because you're bringing us together. And then the last point that I want to make regarding Black History Month, there's a golden rule in the Bible. It's called do unto others as you would have them do unto you. One of the things that I think we need to be mindful of is that in 2025, there may be a great day of reckoning because according to scholars and demographers, in 2025, minorities will be the majority. And I hope, and I hope, now the difference between those who are oppressed is we don't treat people in the way that our oppressors have treated us. But I hope you are mindful that at some point, you will have to come through the people of color and be approved by them. And so I think it would do you well to consider that now. Start making relationships now and stop insulting our best and our brightest.
Next speaker. Let me say this again or for the first time. I do want to apologize for Dr. Abdullah for not affording you the respect of addressing you by your last name and by using your first name instead. I'm not finished reading. Let me finish reading. Obviously, respect for the public begins at the dais, and I'll do my best, and from now on, I'll be calling everyone by their last name and by their title.
You can still yell at someone using their last name and still be disrespectful. People do it all the time.
Do we have another speaker?
We actually got one other late comment card.
Okay,
Would you like
we'll
to
take
take it? Okay.
That's right.
We're going to have Ahmed Khan followed by Robert Christo.
Well, somebody who's flipped off Lisa Hines, who's flipped off parents of dead children who've died in custody. Somebody's told me to shut up, told Dr. Abdullah to shut up, so he wouldn't get it. In my previous comment, Shane Goldsmith, I said, what is your plan? And I want to bring you back to the rush to implement this program that is on 2A. And I think the reason I said what your plan is that are you doing your research? Because a lot is being said around non-lethal weapons, but here are the facts. Between 2001 and 2007, 277 people were killed because of tasers. That's 46 people a year. In 2015, by November 26th, the year was not over, 48 people were murdered by police tasers. Carlos Ocanio, Kelly Thomas, Dante Parker, Alan Caffard, these are just names who were killed by tasers. So we have to see as to what does it mean when you say non-lethal weapons. Let me bring it to the beanbags. Lester Zachary, who was killed because of internal bleeding, a 95-year-old Chicago man killed because of beanbag guns. So these are not non-lethal weapons. Let's talk about rubber bullets. This 40 millimeter. This was used in Ferguson, Missouri. The Human Rights Watch has come out with the reports of excessive police force of rubber bullets used in Brazil, Ukraine, Egypt, and of course, the ones who have really mastered the act of mass slaughter, the Israeli Defense Forces. The British troops used rubber bullets in Northern Ireland between the 70s. So what you're doing is that you're blessing and you're writing off on a program that has a history of a kill chain, a history of a kill chain. So when we talk about flawed by design, you're further contributing and stoking this whole notion of flawed by design. You're further stoking and you are further strengthening an infrastructure that is completely programmed to kill. So what that will do is just what is happening with body cameras. Since body cameras have been instituted, police killings have gone up. That's exactly what it's going to do with these non-lethal weapons.
Thanks. Next speaker.
Next speaker, we have Robert Christo, and we have 2 other late comment cards.
No, we've had enough of last speaker.
All right.
Who are the other two?
The last 2 are Wayne from Encino and Monty Kang.
Okay, so those will be the last 2 late cards. Oh, and you weren't called yet? Okay, we'll call you.
I believe it was called. Good morning, everybody.
That's fine.
Good morning.
Morning, sir.
So, first, I'm going to talk about tasers. Don't worry, I'm going to talk about tasers. But first, I want to bring my mother into the space. My mother is a woman of color. She is a brown woman, and she is a PhD doctor. And every day, she reminds me how hard it is for a woman of color to become a PhD in this system and society. So when you disrespect Dr. Abdullah like that, I see my mother, I see every woman of color who has earned a professional degree and stays getting disrespected in this society. So I want to bring that into the space. Also, the other disrespect that you did, you don't see. You don't understand. And I don't know where you can find the training for that. I don't know how you could train people in humanity. But now I'll speak about tasers. Have you ever seen somebody truly get tased? Like in the street? It's a horrible, horrible sight. People jerk, they contort, they look like they have a seizure, they defecate and urinate on themselves, they throw up. Less than lethal, just because it's less than lethal doesn't mean it's not inhumane. Beanbag guns are still guns, and rubber bullets are still bullets. You shoot someone in the leg, fine, but you put one in the head and they're dead. And your officers already don't have good aim. And from the video we saw in Anaheim, even off duty, your officers don't have good judgment. What if he had a taser in his hand? How many little kids would he have hit with that taser when it deployed the stunners? Could you shoot a 13-year-old in the chest with a beanbag? Probably cave in his chest cavity. Imagine rubber bullets on 13-year-olds. But you know what's the saddest thing? Is that a rubber bullet would be a step up, because when your officer fired upon the middle schoolers, he used an actual live round. And how he's not in jail for that, I have no idea. Thank you.
Okay.
Wayne from Encino.
Mr. Spindler.
So I give because you won't settle it with Waukesha, so Waukesha update. No case filed against her since 2009 with the DA. She was never going to be charged. Held in that jail for no reason but bullshit. Could have released her OR, was no charges filed.
Mr. Spindler,
Last
you know
thing,
what number you're speaking on?
it's up. I signed up for public comment.
No, this is 2A.
No, this is 2A.
Public comment is over.
No,
Would you like to speak on 2A?
Okay, we'll speak on cops and lots of enforcement. Let's talk about our good buddy in Anaheim. You know, I'll tell you, I have to disagree with the media. It was within police policy. Yes. So you read the manual carefully. It says, any white cop wearing a hood can assault anybody crossing his line. Oh, wait a minute. He wasn't wearing a hood. My bad. Yes. Shave head, glasses, big strong hands, grabbing another child's private parts. Is that a police abuse of a minor? How about that left-hand gun thing, huh? Reaching for his belt. How many years has he been a cop? He don't know how to reach for his firearm. He's got to stumble for it. What kind of drugs was this dude on? Did he have a drug test, an alcohol test?
Does that have anything to do with 2A?
See, so little brown kid crosses or cuts his lawn. But you know the good news, Steve, you're going to take care of that kid and his family. They're going to have $6 million of taxpayer-free paid money. That kid ain't never have to work his life again. So you know what? I say for $6 million, everybody go out there and cross his lawn and get that $6 million, baby.
Manny Kong.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the name.
Manny Kong.
He's coming around, sir.
Sir?
Well, good morning to you all. I came up from Orange County. I'm a resident in the city of Orange, neighboring Anaheim. And I have friends who work for the city of Anaheim, including a current city councilman. I was greatly disturbed by what I saw last week, and it's circulated into national media. And with all due respect to police and people who work for the cities, whether here or others or down in Orange County, I think the actions of your officer who patrols here and works in this city but lives in the city of Anaheim was uncalled for. The thing is that there are questioned claims that he was nervous, et cetera. The thing is, he's an adult in his 30s. These are children. Yeah, some of the children might be a little bit larger, but he's trained as a professional. And for him to use that type of force to discharge his weapon, it's just unbelievable. If that had hit a child or a neighbor or anyone, I mean, these bullets and these rounds go quite a distance. But I want to say, in addition to not only the fact that both those kids were arrested and the off-duty police officer was let go, this needs to be thoroughly looked at, because this has become a black eye for the city, which is already notorious from cases stretching back to Rodney King and even before, back into the 50s. Malcolm X came here in 1962 to address police brutality. But I want to say one other thing. Reverend James Lawson, you may recognize the name, a good friend of Mayor Tom Bradley, who we have an International Airport Terminal name. I attended his seminar on nonviolence this past Saturday. I brought up this incident from Anaheim. He's a normally calm person. When I told him that this officer had discharged his weapon, and I said, that's unacceptable, he said, of course not. Of course it is unacceptable. And he raised his voice. He usually doesn't yell. He's 89 years old now. He was the close associate of Dr. King. He's the one that brought him to Memphis for that sanitation worker strike. He is saying this is unacceptable. You really should keep this in mind. Reverend James Lawson said this is unacceptable. So please, if we tell the children to not escalate, tell your officers not to escalate off duty as well.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker.
Melina Abdullah.
So I started not to address the way that I was spoken to, but thank you all for compelling me to address it. I think that it demonstrates to officers how they can treat us. So the officer or the monitor or whoever this is in the back of the room that told me to shut up, he feels like he can tell me to shut up because you tell people to shut up. So when you said, I do appreciate what you said when you said that respect begins with the dais, you need to shift so that you can demonstrate for them how to treat us, because we are regularly disrespected by the officers in this room. So that's what we're talking about, right? I do want to get to this quote unquote, less than lethal force. We have to remember that Carlos Ocaño was killed by less than lethal force, right? We have to remember that Oscar Grant was killed because the officer claims he was going for less than lethal force, right? So this notion of less than lethal force is really an excuse to provide more weapons, more tools to a police force that continues to assault and assail our people. I heard what you said, Cynthia McLean-Hill, when you said that most of the officers are not like Kevin Ferguson. We're not talking about the individual officers. We're talking about the system, right? And the system was intentionally set up this way. Manning Marable writes about this. This is not by accident, right? And so when we say step down, we're not saying that there's no nice officers. What we're saying is that the system is set up to create the outcomes that it creates. And so we're not talking about individual officers. When we say pull that money back, we don't want it in less than lethal force or any other kind of weaponry. We want those resources to be pulled back from a police force that murders our people and put into the resources that actually create healthy, peaceful, just communities. Thanks.
Okay, that's, may we have any other comments on 2A?
No more comment cards.
No, from the commission? Okay. We have a motion for approval of item 2A.
Motion to approve 2A.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay. Thank you. Okay, the next item is the closed session item. Do we have any comments?
We have 2 comment cards.
Okay.
First, we have Red Chief, followed by Wayne from Encino.
Okay.
Red Chief, not present. Wayne from Encino.
The Red Chief says hello. So, another death. And we saw on television in Anaheim how this whole thing works. Out of control, emotional, not properly trained, possibly under a controlled substance. So what are we going to do today? We're going to vote yes for the cops to kill more. It's going to be 4-0. It's like with Waukesha. See that Waukesha vote, you empowered Mr. Baldhead over there in Anaheim when you voted for that, because if it's within policy to kill a young woman and claim she hanged herself in custody, ain't no reason why you can't lynch those little boys for crawling across your lawn, right? Shit never stops. When's it going to stop, Goldman? When's it going to stop, Cynthia? When's it going to stop there, you with the white cover on your head there, you Mother Teresa over there? When is it going to stop? It's going to stop when you tell them to stop. You got to make them stop. And that means every one of these cases must be found guilty. Guilty, 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 guilty. No goddamn exceptions. You'll get the word out. They'll stop this. But they're not going to stop killing. They're not going to stop violating civil rights as long as you're going to do 2 things. 1, you're going to let them keep their badge and their pension. And 2, they're going to keep paying those civil judgments up there in the 10th floor with Paul Krikorian in the budget, because they're writing bonds right now. The city's $247 million in the hole right now, and they're going to go to Wall Street and write bonds to cover it at 0.5% interest. Now, this shit's got to stop. This is not a way to run things. But you people aren't being professional. Yeah, and next time, Dr. Abdullah. Next time, Dr. Abdullah. That's a PhD.
Okay.
The Board of Police Commissioners will now recess into closed session to discuss item number 5A1 in accordance with Government Code 54957.
Hi, I'm Jen Mahoney in Studio City. You're watching LA City View Channel 35, where you can get the best in culture and arts. It's our city, it's our channel.
Hey, just go!
It seemed like another beautiful day in the city of angels.
So what time's your class, honey?
Oh, I have to meet them in about 15 minutes.
How are they doing? You think they'll be ready for the race you were telling me about?
Well, they may not all finish, but they'll try.
Oh, I've got that math test today, Mom. I have to hurry so I can get in a little more setting before class.
Oh, that's right. You better run along. Oh, honey, do you mind taking out the trash?